David Chatham with Angel Oak Creative. Glad to have you back for another Impact interview here at Angel Oak Creative. This year is our 10th anniversary, and we've declared it a year of love and impact. And we're focusing these interviews this year around organizations, people, movements who are making an impact. Certainly our friend Mike Darrow from Feeding the Carolinas fits into that category. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. We've known for quite a while here at Angel Oak and have worked with him in Feeding the Carolinas for a few years now. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about kind of the disasters. This is, certainly a time where we see natural disasters like hurricanes and other types of disasters happen in our region, especially here in the Carolinas. But certainly out west, there's wildfires and, there's tsunamis and all kinds of earthquakes and other things that occur all year long. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about that and how Feeding the Carolinas and their network of food banks and all prepare for those things, how communications is a part of that, and also how we can learn from some of the lessons that they've learned around things like collaboration and preparedness. So Mike, would love to have you introduce yourself real quick and a little bit about Feeding the Carolinas.
Sure thing. Yeah, I'm Mike Darrow. I'm the executive director of Feeding the Carolinas. We are a 501c3 nonprofit that is a member of Feeding America. We're called a partner state association. We're one of about a couple dozen that are part of Feeding America. And what we do is we represent the 10 independent Feeding America food banks in North and South Carolina. So there are 10 of those, all 100 counties in North Carolina, all 46 in South Carolina are served by one of those 10 food banks. And so they're all independent nonprofits. So what we do is they are members of Feeding the Carolinas. And so what we do is we do advocacy for them, lobbying, we do marketing, brand awareness, the good work of food banks. And we raise resources, and that's not just money, but also things like getting National Guard deployed during a pandemic, for example. And then, of course, disaster relief and support is a big part of what we do, kind of playing air traffic control, if you will, in coordinating resources and all that. And so I've been doing this for almost 4 years and enjoying every bit of it to help literally feed the Carolinas.
Yeah, you all do amazing work. So thank you for that. Thank you for the impact that you make on our communities. It's, knowing a little bit of the inside baseball with you all, it's, air traffic control is not an understatement for the work that you do. There's probably any given day, I would guess there's probably hundreds of trucks going across the two states delivering food and then during a crisis, all of that just becomes hyper focused, I would guess. So thank you all for what you do. And I know it's not an easy job, but the impact you make is huge. So thank you for that, Mike, and all of those that are a part of your team.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And we can't do it without the support of the community and all. And yeah, we are a logistics machine. I mean, these are multi-million-dollar distribution centers, if you will, that are running as a nonprofit. And so you're right, hundreds of trucks and thousands of people involved.
So would you say you're the Amazon of food delivery within?
We get, we work with what we call partner agencies, which are the local community, food pantries, community centers, anyone else who's distributing food at the community level. Because I'm a firm believer in, local problems require local solutions. And that's whether you're talking, food banking or healthcare or homelessness or anything, it starts in our communities. And so we're a big believer of that. We have literally thousands of those partner agencies out there that we provide food to. And so, yeah, our distribution network reaches all the way down to your local community, primarily run by volunteers.
Wow, that's great. Well, sadly, it's hurricane season here in the Carolinas, and for those of us who have lived here most, if not all of our lives, we're kind of used to it. But if you can kind of give folks a little bit of an idea of what your organization, how you prepare for this time, why you prepare for this time, maybe what role communications plays in that. And I don't just mean marketing, but the broader communications, and what kind of challenge that presents for you all.
Sure. Quick story. I started in September of 2018 with Feeding the Carolinas. I started the same day as Hurricane Florence.
Oh, wow.
Lawrence and I arrived the same day. Literally had no office, no computer, and we just dove in. And Florence was, as most people know, was a huge hurricane with a huge impact for many months. It directly impacted 5 of our 10 food banks of our membership.
Wow.
And then the other 5, indirectly. So right from the get-go, we had to coordinate and had to, do more. Each food bank has a disaster plan. It's required by Feeding America, but they would do it anyways because we're in, Hurricane Alley, and it's not a if but a when. And so each food bank has a disaster plan where they can prepare and they, activate it, if you will. We didn't really have one for Feeding the Carolinas for a broader. And so we kind of ad hoc, reactively, we're working together, and it really coalesced the power of our network in terms of communicating with each other and collaborating. And so from that, when we came out of that, we determined that we definitely needed to have a Feeding the Carolinas disaster plan, so we could look at the broader picture and kind of formalize that a little bit. And so we brought in a consultant to help do that. And as you know, Angel Oak, shameless plug, helped us to put it all together and package it up into a nice plan that's easy to read and easy to execute. And so we have that. And so just in general, what a food bank would do for itself is, depending on where it is, if you're the Charleston, if you're Low Country Food Bank in Charleston, you have a different game plan than Second Harvest Metrolina in Charlotte, for example. And so the ones that are on the coast are looking at storage of water, shelf stable canned goods. They're building it up right now. They're storing water, to build up to be ready just in case. They're thinking about things like, if we lose power, if our volunteers can't get here, and that's part of their planning. If you're Metrolina in Charlotte, what you're doing is planning on how you can help the other food banks, because chances are a hurricane's not going to directly impact you or won't be a long term. And so, Metrolina Charlotte, they pack, literally thousands of food boxes, shelf stable, pop top cans kind of thing, and store water. And so each food bank has their plan. And so what Feeding the Carolinas is doing is coordinating all of that. And really our plan is about communications more so than physical product, because the food banks are doing it. And so we actually just had a meeting 2 weeks ago, kind of our pre-disaster meeting, first time we've done that, where we talked about what does each food bank have that they can bring to the table. And so, as I mentioned, in Florence, we were doing that ad hoc. We had, the Second Harvest Northwest and Winston was, I've got a truck and a driver I can send to you, Charleston, and Manna up in Asheville, kind of same thing. At this meeting, we talked about that proactively. Now, it's a little challenging now, being in the tail end of a pandemic, where a lot of the food banks don't have a lot of resources to share, but we certainly going to do what we can. And so we identified who has a truck that they can loan, who has logistics people that they could send to a food bank to help manage their day-to-day, while the home team, if you will, is managing the disaster piece. Because daily hunger doesn't end just because a hurricane shows up.
Right.
You're running two different
increases, right?
Right. You're running two functions at the same time. And so if a team can come in and kind of run day to day, then the home team, the food bank team there can do the disaster. And so our meeting was to prep for that and to see who has space, who has dry goods space, who has perishable space. I mentioned Metroline in Charlotte. They have a branch in Salisbury they just went online with that is very large for both dry goods and perishable storage. And so identifying those ahead of time and using the disaster plan we've created, a lot of it, again, is building on collaboration and communication. because people want to know what's going on from, the public, the press, I'm a spokesperson for that, but also internally when we're working with each state's emergency management team and
Yeah.
they're getting calls, for help or for water or whatever. If I proactively know, where stuff is, or during a hurricane, we may get a call from a grocery chain that's in the Midwest, let's say, or Walmart, who's national, who says, I've got 10 truckloads coming to you of water. Where do you
Wow.
want them? And so if I know ahead of time where we've got storage, then it can certainly help. So collaboration, communication is the whole ball game in knowing what's going on and how we can react. The Florence exposed one challenge in that we were able to react pretty quickly the first 24, 48, 2 or 3 days, but then we ran out of food in Charleston or in
Yeah.
our New Bern branch, which runs out of Raleigh or Wilmington, who are islands. And so you couldn't get in there to get to the food. And so we're looking at pre-staging and things like that to kind of get ahead of the storm, ahead of the curve, and be moving product to where it's needed.
Yeah, so what I've heard so far, some things that might be kind of transferable to other nonprofits is, kind of expect the unexpected, right? Is to, predict as best you can, but also be nimble and be able to adapt to some of those things. Certainly have heard, cooperation, collaboration, communication, all of those things are critical, just day to day, but especially during a crisis of some kind. And
Absolutely.
then, also this idea of, really leaning into supporting each other. And, I don't hear a lot of, concern about, stepping on somebody's toes or anything, right? But it's more about how can we all work together to get this done. And, I think for some nonprofits, there's this, there's some sense of territoriality, right? That they own this area or they, and I think that can be such a challenge. How do you all overcome that idea that, this is our, property, this is our area, and we're the ones responsible for this, or, we don't want people treading onto our territory. How do you overcome some of that?
Yeah, and that it's funny when you say that nonprofits can get territorial. I worked with free health clinics prior to this, and it was funny. I used to kind of half jokingly say to my members, "You're fighting over sick people. I think there's plenty to go around." It's kind of the same thing with hunger, but food banks by definition are territorial. I have these 20 counties, you have these 10. And so what was fascinating about Florence, Florence was a horrible thing, but there were some blessings out of it. And all that kind of washed away where you had, like I said, Metrolina and Charlotte sending tens of thousands of food boxes, not expecting and not getting paid for them.
Yeah.
We'll take care of it. When they sent those trucks and drivers, it was like, here you go. And so you've got to, kind of see the bigger picture. We have to remember, what it is we do, why we do what we do, and it's to feed people. No one should go hungry. That's ridiculous. And especially during a disaster. And so we have to break through those both internally as well as externally. And so, Salvation Army, Red Cross, Baptist on Mission.
Yeah.
I love them. They come pouring in there for the long run. We coordinate with them, so we want to do, the last thing we want to do is set up a food distribution station, and we come rolling in there and there's, Red Cross or there's Salvation Army or there's, Baptist Men,
right.
Duplicate. And so collaboration, coordination is really necessary. And so the states do a good job, their emergency management folks, of having representatives of all of us, so you have the private and public sector. You have to kind of throw that out of the window, and that's, and a lot of it is ad hoc. It's on the fly. And, personally, that's something this sounds funny, but I like chaos and kind of figuring it out as we go. And, rules mean nothing to me when people are hungry or a hurricane's come rolling through and their house is gone and they're
Right.
looking for help. I don't, and so that's kind of the mentality that we have. And that's very transferable to any nonprofit, I think, in any sector. Um, we all have gone through and are going through the pandemic, which touched every nonprofit. And
Yeah.
so I think it really opened eyes to expect the unexpected. I mean, who could call that? And preparation. You're going to be impacted by some kind of a disaster. What's your game plan? What's your
Yeah.
continuity plan? What's your plan for, you're backing up your computer systems, or if your office is gone or you can't get to it, how do you function? And so
Yeah.
much of what we
Because if
do,
you,
it's normally what we do, but it's very transferable.
yeah. And because if you can't operate, you can't make an impact, right? I mean,
Right.
you have no ability to serve someone if you're paralyzed by technology or,
Yeah.
by, again, to your point, I remember during that storm, literally nobody could get in and out of Wilmington, right? Because of the storm. So, how do you prepare for that? And, it sounds like learning from those things. And I think that's another thing that I do believe nonprofits are fairly good at is kind of this idea of resiliency, right? That,
Mhm.
for most nonprofits, I feel like really can recover from, even when it's their fault or when they fail, but they can recover quickly, because they're moving on to a solution, right? And not just living in the problem. And, I admire that with a lot of nonprofits. And, the food banks are notorious for being able to really respond quickly and are, just, such an important part of the disaster recovery and just the daily life, but also just the disaster recovery ecosystem, right? That's out there. So, and you mentioned a handful of those partners that you work with and how important they are. How can organizations improve that kind of collaboration? How can they foster that while still maintaining and really focused on their own mission, right? Because you don't want to get distracted from your daily mission, but you want to do things that help you further your mission. So what are some lessons you've learned about, being able to foster those collaborations, but still stay focused on your day-to-day mission?
Yeah, I think that's critical. Our mission is to alleviate hunger. And so focusing on root cause, kind of getting upstream, that, but yet still feeding people daily, still reacting to disaster. So you're living in kind of two worlds. And so if we keep that in mind, we keep, the focus on the bigger picture, root cause, that's a lot. We hear about social determinants of health, and there's a lot of different pieces of that, which means there's a lot of other nonprofits and private sector groups that we should be working with. And one blessing, this sounds kind of weird, but one blessing of the pandemic is a lot of other organizations that we never would have been talking to, we're talking to. And so I think as a nonprofit, my advice is talk to everyone. Reach out, be proactive, say who else is, working in our sphere or working in our lane or in one of the lanes of this 6-lane highway where I'm, or even, in a whole another highway. Just find out because there's overlaps, even just running a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Or the technology piece, or there's always going to be something you can learn. And it doesn't mean, there are some groups that we network with that we do things different,
Yeah.
and we wouldn't ever kind of work together, but we can still work indirectly. There's a lot of opportunities there. And so we have to kind of get rid of those silos, get rid of that territorialism, if you will. We talk to everyone, and believe me, they all call. And so,
Yeah.
we stay really busy kind of sorting through how can we work together, on advocacy, apple pie motherhood and hunger, free, and feeding people is, kind of at the forefront right now. And so,
Yeah.
having other partners with you that are advocating for policy change like that, you can learn from all that. And so I think that's very important, is to talk to every organization out there and just see what's there. If there's nothing, in particular, it's a keep in touch and, let me know how I can support you, to each other on other topics, because there's
Right.
things that are kind of broader than, we care about access to healthcare, because then, if you're not paying your doctor's bills, you can buy food,
Right.
and so there's organizations that are in that lane of healthcare that we would support different policies or, topics. So be open. You got to be
Yeah.
open.
Thank you. That's very helpful. The other area that constantly is part of nonprofit life is fundraising, right? I mean, that's you wake up in the morning and you go to bed at night, and that fundraising element's always there. How have your food banks, whether it was any lessons that they learned during COVID? I mean, we found a lot of our clients, their giving increased during that time because people were responding with generous hearts and wanting to help certain causes. I know food banks were the beneficiaries of some significant gifts from some larger donors, but also I think day to day, many people stepped up as individuals and gave. What were some of the lessons that you maybe learned through some of that time, and maybe you're still learning through some other crises, of how important it is to engage donors, and what does that look like both on a day-to-day basis, but also especially during a crisis?
Sure. It's again, communication and relationships. Yes, the food banks and Feeding the Carolinas did well. People responded. Now, we had a 50 to 60% increase in demand for food. And so,
Right.
when people increase their giving 20, 30%, there's still,
There's still a
we
gap.
needed it all. We bought food like crazy, let me tell you, because the supply chain broke down. And so what we had to do is really focus on our messaging and what our need was and what the value add. There's still an ROI aspect, and we're nervous about as we kind of move out of it and attentions shift, donors shift to another direction. And so the important thing is communication and messaging. I'm a big believer in value add, and what's the ROI? What's the return on the investment? So
What's the impact, right?
what's the impact? There you go. And so we've got to talk about that. We got to talk about, here's what we're doing to help people, to get away from the perception that people who come to a food bank are there forever. They're not. The average person is there 3 to 4 months. And, and so we're helping someone who had a car breakdown, a medical bill, whatever, and they need food for a month or two.
Yeah.
And so messaging that, making sure we understand that, and making that messaging happen is important, and stewarding those donors. And again, it's preparation. There are donors I was talking to and working with prior to the pandemic, prior to Florence, prior to other things that have happened, so it's not just when you need it. And so there were some donors that we were talking to, that both private and public, frankly, that we didn't need money right then. And
Yeah.
I don't, when I first started, I don't need your money. I need I need your resources. I need your feedback. I need your understanding. And when you talk to, funders that way, or people that way, they're a little taken aback because they're waiting for you to ask. And so I say, no, I'm not asking now. I want to understand what we need. And I built, it's a relationship game. It always has been, and it's a long term. And so
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in building those relationships ahead of anything. And then when the time comes, we had one recently where a private organization asked if we needed more money, during the pandemic. And I said, no. And they were like, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm always transparent with you guys. Right now, we're okay. Right now. Said, let me come back in 6 months. And so we're talking, about other projects and things. And so,
Mike, I can hear people out there already saying, what are you, nuts? You're turning down money?
yeah, it's a long-term game. You can't focus on the short term. You can't constantly go back to the well unless you have that true need, and you got to be transparent.
Yeah.
And you got to be focused on that mission. You may have heard the term mission creep, where a funder has a significant amount of money and say, oh yeah, okay, I guess we can kind of do that. And next thing you know, you're off the highway and in the ditch. And so
You
there are
become
times
a
when
food bank and healthcare provider, right? This is
yeah, and so there are times when you may say, well, that's really not what we do, but here's another organization, let me connect you.
Yeah.
Boy, that organization is
great.
gonna love you. or, timing. And so it's all about relationships, whether you're talking about a single individual who's giving $25, all the way up to a multi-million-dollar. It is all about relationships and making sure, because I don't ask for money. I do not ask for money. What I do is I allow people to give to an organization and a cause that they're passionate about.
Yeah.
Once you understand that, those conversations become easy because you're not asking for money. You're identifying people who are passionate about food, about hunger, and giving them an opportunity to make an impact.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I love organizations and leaders who don't see a check. They see a relationship, they see a person, they see an opportunity to engage somebody, to to offer a chance for them to be part of something bigger than themselves, right? And I've seen that over and over. The nonprofit leaders that I have really come to respect, like you, do have that approach. For one, it's an abundance mindset, right? It's not this idea that there's this little limited bucket of money out there that everybody's fighting for, right? That there's enough to go around in this world, right? I mean, there's more than enough, and I think we've seen that. And then, certainly when there are opportunities to build those relationships and to invite people into the mission, that that again, it's seen as a start to a relationship or a continuation of a relationship, and not as a transaction, right? And I think again, that's been around for a long time. That's nothing new, but for some reason, it doesn't translate to every organization. They lean much more. Some organizations just lean into that check counting and they don't look at building those relationships. So
the minute you see it as a check or see it as a transaction, that's the beginning of the end.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it may be, And again, you may make some money, right? But it's what happens during those long, some of those long droughts of support, those people often come through when they're needed most. And because you've told them, hey, you know what, when we need you, we're going to reach out and we'll be there. Otherwise, help someone else who needs it right now. And it's amazing what kind of relationship and respect that builds.
Absolutely.
Well, I thank you for your time. Thank you for Feeding the Carolinas and all the work that you do. Thank you for your insights here today on how organizations can, work through and prepare for these types of disasters. And you all are certainly a model for how that can be done. I know you're constantly improving those things, and you've not reached perfection yet, but I think you certainly set the tone for what organizations can, try to achieve. So appreciate that. Any last advice or any last words you'd like to leave other nonprofit leaders like yourself?
One thing I was thinking of too is that collaboration and coordination is not just, internally or with other nonprofits, other private, it's also with your different resources. And so we tap into Angel Oak, Creative to help us. We we outsource all of our accounting and a lot of the fundraising acknowledgements and some of that, because, Feeding the Carolinas is lean and mean. It's myself, and I have a farm to food bank director who manages our produce program, getting local produce from growers here in the Carolinas to our food banks and nationally through Feeding America. Phenomenally. It's the biggest farm to food bank program in Feeding America by far, by multiple, because we're in a produce rich state. But anyways, Cindy and I are it. No admin, no other, and we run a multi-million dollar, because I'm lean and mean, and I don't like, but I know when resources are important. And so I love outsourcing, different pieces. I'm not an expert in accounting, so I'm gonna bring in an accounting firm, Outfitters 4, just to mention. They only do nonprofits. They do a lot of nonprofit work. And so it matches well. And so, Angel Oak Creative is another example of, and I'm not saying that to go spend money or whatever, you do have to invest resources.
Right.
Certainly true. But you can have conversations and learn from that too. So look at building those relationships, networking and all that with other nonprofits, certainly, but also think about how you can leverage your resources, both
That's
day to
great.
day and during disaster times. IT is another example. I don't do IT. I have nobody. And so we actually use a food bank that does it for us for free. You
Yeah.
know, there's things like that, they didn't cost us a dime, and I'm, getting, quality service and,
Yeah.
and
No,
so,
that's great. Yeah, I think a lot of nonprofits get so focused on trying to, I like your definition of lean and mean. It doesn't mean that you can't spend money, but it means that you spend
right,
it wisely, right?
correct.
And it, that you choose those areas in which you invest so that you can stay focused on your primary mission, and you're not out balancing a checkbook, right? You're just checking the work of that accountant, right? To make sure that everything's
Right.
on the up and up. But ultimately, you're not the one going in and doing that work, and you shouldn't be, right? Because you need to be focusing on getting ready for hurricane season or coordinating that next shipment and all of those things.
Yeah,
So
for
no,
sure.
that's great
And,
advice. How can people learn more about Feeding the Carolinas?
sure. We have a website, feedingthecarolinas.org. We're actually, as you know, David, we're doing some, revisions to our website. We're shifting. We just redid our strategic plan, and we're shifting more to being a proactive and resource minded. Not that we weren't before, and so we're building out, we've got a couple web pages coming that are disaster focused on how can I help and how can I get help.
That's
Looking at
great.
more of that, the food is medicine in that area, looking at nutrition, kind of nourishing the Carolinas, if you will. And so you'll see a transition coming, but we do have a website that talks about what we do. You can find a food bank there. And then on their websites, you can search for a local community pantry if you're looking for food. If you're looking to donate, it's on our website. If you're looking to volunteer, it's on our website. And so lots of different ways to support, and volunteering is a big part.
Great.
We're very volunteer driven. And so there's all kinds of activities you can do at a food bank or at your local community pantry. Check with them, they're volunteer driven too. And so you can go all the way down to the community level or at the food bank level or Feeding the Carolinas, which is a, Carolinas level. So yeah, check us
Well,
out.
thank you. You all do amazing work and make such a great impact. Angel Oak is honored to partner with you. So thank you for that opportunity, and just grateful to be able to make a small impact on your organizations and the ones and the people that you serve. Encourage people to check out some of our other impact interviews. If you go to nonprofitloveandimpact.org, or .com, I'm sorry, nonprofitloveandimpact.com. That's our landing page for all of the things that we're doing here, like these interviews, as well as some other resources. And Mike, just thank you for everything and look forward to staying in touch. And I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
Sure thing. Thanks a lot for letting me be here.
Yeah, keep up the great work. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.